It's Wednesday, the 15th of March, 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's jump straight into it. Story number 1, the share prices of the big banks on the ASX have tumbled, with $57 billion wiped off the value of the banks over the past 6 weeks. This is on the back of higher interest rates, political pressure, and over the weekend, the collapse of a US bank.
Yes, bank stocks have tumbled, none more so than Commonwealth Bank, which triggered the sell-off when, at its half-year earnings announcement in mid-February, said net interest margins, that's the difference between what a bank receives on loans and pays out on deposits, had peaked. Since its high about 6 weeks ago, Commonwealth Bank's share price is down 15%. That's worth about $27 billion in value to the bank. Now, yesterday, Commonwealth Bank closed down slightly to $95.01. That's its lowest close since October last year. There's more to it than net interest margins. The banks are coming under political pressure to pass on higher deposit rates following Reserve Bank decisions to lift official rates. Politics and the banks don't always mix, and that's made some investors nervous. Finally, over the weekend, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in the US hit bank stocks very hard. In fact, over the past 2 days, global financial stocks have lost around $700 billion in value, according to Bloomberg. Locally, it's not just about the Commonwealth Bank. National Australia Bank's off 12%. Wiping $12 billion off its market value since its peak in February. ANZ and Westpac are both off around 11%. Suncorp's the next biggest retail bank. It was down 3.5% yesterday, and it's off 8% since its February peak. Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, Bank of Queensland, they're all kind of in the same boat. Not good news for the bank's shareholders.
No, certainly not. All right, on to story number 2, and it is a big one, Sean. The fighting has begun over the spoils and fallout from the federal government's decision to spend up to $368 billion, that is a big, big number, over the next 3 decades to buy, build, operate and maintain a fleet of 8 nuclear-powered submarines.
Yes, the massive spend, the biggest procurement deal ever, has already set off debate among states about who's getting what. It's also put in peril the improving relationship between Canberra and Beijing. Now, South Australia is the big winner, with all 8 nuclear-powered subs to be built in Adelaide, generating about 20,000 jobs over 3 years. Western Australia does okay too, with $9 billion going to Defence Department upgrades in the state. The government will also pick a site for a submarine base on the east coast, either Newcastle, Brisbane or Port Kembla. Jockeying between Queensland and New South Wales has begun. China yesterday was critical of the deal, with its mission to the United States calling it a blatant act that undermined the international non-proliferation system, fuels arms races and hurts peace and stability in the region. Experts say that the thawing of diplomatic relations, including Trade Minister Don Farrell's proposed visit to China in coming weeks, is at risk, and that $20 billion worth of trade sanctions imposed in 2020 may take longer. These next-generation subs, Anthony Albanese pointed out yesterday, are nuclear-powered, but they do not carry nuclear weapons. Very, very big deal for the Australian Defence Force and indeed for Australia as a country.
Yes, indeed. Sean, story number 3, business conditions remained strong last month despite higher interest rates and inflation.
Yes, it's a bright spot in the economic outlook. The National Australia Bank survey released yesterday shows conditions fell a touch in February. They remain really strong. Trading conditions, employment, profitability all sit at historically high levels. So too do price and cost growth measures. Now, NAB's chief economist Alan Oster said consumer-facing sectors like retail and personal services were doing best. The flip side to this is consumer sentiment. Very, very weak. The Westpac Melbourne Institute Index came in yesterday at 78.5 points. Anything below 80 is very rare. In fact, it hasn't occurred since the early 1990s. Now, there's been 2 months in a row of sub-80 readings. Consumers really want an end to these rate hikes. That's what that's saying.
Sean, story number 4 is kind of linked to story number 1. Treasurer Jim Chalmers yesterday said the local banking system is well capitalised and has plenty of liquidity amid the panic caused by the failure of the US-based Silicon Valley Bank.
Yes, this is all about the fallout from that failure. Now, Chalmers said that he spoke to the Reserve Bank, to Treasury, to APRA, the regulator, to the corporate regulator, ASIC, and the banking system is resilient, well capitalised, etc. What's really interesting at the moment is what's happening in bond markets as a result of this collapse. Bond markets are forecasting that the era of high interest rates is over. Yes, over. Now, bond yields reflect expectations about future interest rates. Short-term bond yields are now below official interest rates in a bunch of countries: US, Canada, Europe, UK, Australia. In Australia, the bond market is saying no more rate hikes. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's up to the bosses and boards of the central banks like the Reserve Bank. But professional investors are betting big sums of money that rate rises are coming to an end.
All right, and last one, story number 5. The Balinese government, Sean, has banned Australians and other foreign tourists from renting scooters.
It's almost a rite of passage for Australian tourists in the holiday mecca. Hire a scooter and ride around, but officials are sick of illegal activities, not wearing a helmet, driving recklessly. Australians are not the worst offenders. Apparently, of the 170 traffic violations by foreign tourists last week, 56 of them were Russians compared to 10 Australians. Now, under Indonesia's traffic laws, scooter drivers who are not wearing helmets are fined about $24.50. Drivers without a license are fined about $98. But the Balinese government basically wants to put an end to foreigners riding scooters dangerously.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 15th of March, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. It also includes a whole bunch of interviews. Today's, for instance, is all about the FIRE movement, Financial Independence, Retire Early. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.